What's up, football fans? Welcome to another edition of Sports Crunch with DKROM, and we are officially 120 football minutes away from Super Bowl 50. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about on the show today. If there was any weekend that showed why the NFL is the greatest reality television show ever conceived by mankind, it had to be this past weekend, as we saw a lot of great games and a lot of historical moments that will lead to more historical moments this week. And joining me to break it down is my good friend, as always, Mr. Chris Shanafelt of the CS Podcast, one of the best friends of the program. Chris, good to have you again.
Oh, it's good to be here. Always a pleasure, and especially after a weekend that we just had in the NFL. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome, Chris. It's always a pleasure as usual. And as you alluded to, we want to start with one of the arguably the wildest playoff game I've ever seen. If you thought Baltimore and Denver was wild in 2012, or Seattle, Green Bay NFC Championship was wild last year, this one topped them both, in my opinion. One of the wildest games I've ever seen between the Packers and the Cardinals in the desert. And despite the Cardinals winning the game in overtime, let me just say, Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, delivered one of the best performances I have ever seen from a quarterback. And I think Aaron Rodgers gave the best performance of his entire career. No Jordy Nelson, no Randall Cobb, no Devontae Adams, although Devontae Adams stinks, and no Ty Montgomery, although Ty Montgomery's unproven. He got by with Jared Abbrederis and your man Jeff Janis out of Saginaw Valley State. He made those receivers that night. Don't you think that has to be the best performance of Aaron Rodgers' career, given the circumstances he was under?
Yeah, I think it's tough to point out any other performance. I mean, especially in the divisional round of the playoffs against a very good Arizona Cardinals team, which is a team that has a pretty nice defense at that. And here he is without his top targets, throwing it to Jared Abbrederis and Jeff Janis, both second-year players who really don't have a lot of experience. I think heading into this game, Janis had about only 2 career receptions. He was mainly a special teams type player this season, and last year he was stashed on their practice squad. And as for Abbrederis, that was a guy that I believe tore his ACL or had a season-ending injury last year before the start of the season. So, on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, this is basically both of these guys' rookie year. I mean, this is their first year, actually playing on the offensive side of the ball, and obviously that's a huge credit to Aaron Rodgers being able to put on that kind of performance with these wide receivers who he is very limited in terms of practice time with these guys, throwing the ball to these guys. So yeah, I mean, it would be hard to point out any other performance when talking about Aaron Rodgers' career. And it's funny because it was such a great performance, and unfortunately if you're a Packers fan, unfortunately, we're talking about a Packers loss. But here it is, Aaron Rodgers, one of the arguably the greatest performance he's put on so far in his NFL career.
Totally, and that performance illustrates why I believe that when all is said and done, he'll be on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks at the end of the day. We'll talk about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady later in the show, folks, but I have never seen a quarterback with a more gifted athletic skill set than Aaron Rodgers. Period. End of story. That guy is just something special. To complete 2 Hail Marys in one season, I was literally thinking before that Hail Mary to Janis in the end zone, if there is any quarterback that can pull it off 2 times, it's Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. I kind of had a feeling he was going to do it again. Did you? I seriously had that feeling.
I didn't know what to think, to be honest. I knew the game wasn't over, and that's all I knew. And even though the Packers had to complete I think it was like a 46-yard Hail Mary to get into the end zone, I gotta say, I mean, it was such a great play, I almost don't want to say it was shocking, because you knew that, okay, the game's not over. It's a one-possession game. The Packers have a chance to force it into overtime. And, they do have, a quarterback who, like you said, at the end of his career, he will be in the discussion as, arguably the greatest of all time. So I wouldn't even like to say that I was shocked to see it happen. I mean, like you, we've seen it happen just weeks ago against the Detroit Lions in a game that they shouldn't have won at all.
Yes, and when that pass was complete, I literally screamed out loud. It was like so amazing. It was so freaking amazing. I wasn't really rooting for any team to win, but I was just so happy for Aaron Rodgers after the kind of shit he had to endure this year with all the injuries and the lack of help around him in the running game and the offensive line, you name it. He looked helpless this year, yet he at the right time turned it on. And God.
As a football fan, I don't think you could ask for a much better way to see a game go into overtime, a playoff game at that.
Absolutely, and don't forget the 4th and 20 throw from his own 1 yard line all the way to the Cardinals 36 to Giannis before that. Keep that one in mind too, right?
Yeah. Oh, if it wasn't for that throw, there's no way they get in the end zone on a Hail Mary. They'd have to, do a few laterals and try to work their magic there.
Absolutely, most definitely, and well, moving on. The Cardinals did pull that game out, and I believe the guy who almost single-handedly won that game for them was Larry Fitzgerald. He was an absolute animal in the second half. He was not only catching every ball thrown at him, he was sacrificing his body. He was breaking tackles, fighting for extra yards, however the freaking way he could. Pardon my language. But Larry Fitzgerald, keep in mind, he is 32 years old. This is, I believe, his 11th or 12th season in the NFL. And do you think Larry Fitzgerald deep down inside knows that this could be his last best chance at winning a Super Bowl in his Hall of Fame career? Is he playing like a man on a mission or what?
Oh, I got to think so. I mean, as good as this Cardinals team is, Carson Palmer is up there in age. Larry Fitzgerald himself is up there in age as well. I got to think he knows that this is his last chance. I mean, they do have a lot of great young talent, but this is a quarterback's league. And, after Carson Palmer, I really don't see anybody that you would feel confident in, handing the keys over to once Carson Palmer's up. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if, maybe after next season, Carson Palmer calls it a career, maybe 2 more years, but it's coming up soon. And, obviously the football season is coming to an end. The college season is officially over. And, I don't want to get into any draft talk or anything, but I think a guy like Carson Wentz, towards the end of the first round, have him sit behind Carson Palmer for a year or two. That'd be a perfect selection for them. But, yeah, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, that guy went nuts, and it's so great to see a player, a person like Larry Fitzgerald have the success that he's had this season. I mean, over the last 2 or 3 seasons, many people were talking about, is he just not the same receiver anymore? But in reality, it was just because he didn't have the right guy throwing him the football, and now we see what he can do with an actual, at least decent quarterback. And obviously, Carson Palmer has been much better than decent this season. It's been awesome to see. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's many other players that I'd rather see have the success that Larry Fitzgerald just had this past weekend than Larry Fitzgerald himself.
Most definitely. Like Peyton Manning, I think Larry Fitzgerald, in terms of off the field, is the Peyton Manning of wide receivers. I haven't met a guy who has shown more class or more grace at that position than Larry Fitzgerald. Such a generous spirit to the community, and a guy who just shuts up and does his work and works his butt off every single year. And he really worked hard to change his game, showing that he has still a couple years left in the tank. And the way he ran on that 75-yard catch in overtime, it was like the young Larry Fitzgerald we were watching. Did it seem that way?
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. And you know what? The Packers need to, save that little tape. You save that one play. And I know they're different positions, but they got to show that every single day to Eddie Lacy. Look, get in the right physical condition. And although they're 2 totally different positions, 2 different body structures. We've seen Eddie Lacy break off a long run in this game, and it seemed like it took forever before somebody was able to finally track him down. But absolutely a fantastic play by Larry Fitzgerald. Yes. A great player, certainly a Hall of Famer once his career is over, and a great person off the field. You gotta love the post-game interview where he's so out of breath. I mean, he's fighting to get every single word out, and he still finds the time, and it's on his mind that I want to give Chris Mortensen, my best wishes. I mean, true class act there by Larry Fitzgerald.
Absolutely. And even though I haven't met him, and I don't think you've met him either, have you? Have you met him?
No.
But Chris Mortensen has been a pioneer, not just in the field of NFL inside investigative reporting, but sports inside investigative reporting. He was one of the godfathers of the Sports Insider. And as I'm sure most of you have heard, he was just diagnosed with highly aggressive throat cancer, and he's going to have to undergo very intensive chemotherapy treatments over the next several months. And as a cancer patient myself, I definitely know what he's going through. And more, Chris and I and all the people who look up to you in this business, we look to you as one of the godfathers of this business, not just because of how you work, but of the generosity you showed to everybody. You invited competition. You didn't disparage it, as Jay Glazer suggested on the Fox pregame yesterday. We love you more, and we know you're going to beat it. Go get it, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think I could add anything more to that. I mean, I certainly want to send our best wishes to Chris Mortensen. Obviously, very scary process he's going to start beginning here soon. And I really don't think there's any doubt that he'll make it through. Obviously watching him do his thing, a huge fan of his work, and to hear that news on this past Friday was very, very shocking, to say the least. It's not something you expect, to happen to anybody. And to hear that news, it was very sad. And, obviously we're going to miss his great work here, but there's no doubt that he'll be back and better than ever.
I believe he will too. And I also believe that this is a similar disease that current Sacramento Kings head coach George Karl underwent 5 years ago. He had like a form of throat cancer that forced him to miss the remainder of the basketball season with the Denver Nuggets at the time. And that's why it's only explainable why Mortensen is taking a leave from ESPN to deal with the chemotherapy and the awful side effects it brings. So,
and if I could add one more thing, I forget his name. But he was one of the officials in yesterday's Seattle and Carolina game. He also
Tony Corretti.
Yeah, there you go. And he also had the same thing that Chris Mortensen is going to stage 4 throat cancer. So it's certainly beatable. And again, hearing people talk about Chris Mortensen and obviously being a fan of his work for years, it sounds like he's a great man of faith, and there's almost no doubt that he'll pull through.
Absolutely. Faith is a powerful thing, as I learned myself during my journey through cancer 5 years ago, and it'll be 6 years this May, and Chris Mortensen will say the same thing. And moving right along, though, back to football right now. As good as Larry Fitzgerald played that evening, I was very, very, very puzzled. Puzzled's putting it kindly. I was enraged, kind of, at Carson Palmer's performance. He kind of looked like a bad Jay Cutler at times, I'll tell you that. The bad Jay Cutler at times, by throwing off his back foot, floating in the air, intercepted in the end zone. If he leads Arizona on a touchdown drive that possession, this game wouldn't have been that close. It shouldn't have been that close, because Palmer had 2 turnovers inside Green Bay territory with sloppy mechanics. Even the second touchdown pass of the night he threw to Michael Floyd should have been picked off. It bounced off of Fitzgerald's hands, and if Casey Hayward was in a better spot, he would have picked it off. So Palmer just looked awful on Saturday night. Don't let his numbers fool you. He was horrendous, in my opinion. What do you think is wrong with him? Is it the finger injury? Is it father time? I don't know. Or is it something else? And what's wrong with him? And how worried should the Cardinals be about him right now?
No, I don't think they should be worried. Yeah, certainly not a game that. Certainly a game that he's going to want to forget. I think he threw for like over 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But like you said, don't let the numbers fool you. It was not a great performance out of Carson Palmer. While on the other side, we had a great performance out of Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know. I mean, I think the finger injury certainly could have had something to do with it. But I think something else could be, he was playing in a playoff game. He had yet to win a playoff game yet. Maybe the pressure was kind of getting up to him. A lot of people are talking about Arizona, being the favorite in the NFC. And of course, when you do that, you got to also bring up the Carolina Panthers. And especially now that they'll both be meeting in the NFC Championship game, it will come down to those two teams. But I think the pressure had something to do with it, and I think getting that first playoff victory under his belt, I think that should kind of boost his confidence and hopefully improve his game, and we'll certainly see that when he takes on the Panthers.
Very good point. Very good point. It's very hard to get that first win, and if you thought Peyton Manning had to wait long for his first playoff win, Carson Palmer had to wait 10 times as longer. So if you ask Peyton Manning how he felt when he had to win his first playoff game, let's see, 6 years into his career, could only imagine how long it took Palmer for it. He talked to Peyton Manning about how much pressure he felt to win his first playoff game. Palmer was under probably 3 times as much pressure, I'd argue. So there goes that. And speaking of those Carolina Panthers, I want to briefly discuss their victory yesterday on the Seahawks. It was 31-24, yet the Panthers scored all 31 points in that first half. And it was like something that neither you nor me did expect. They just annihilated Seattle in that first half, 31-0. But for some reason, they went into what did Ron Rivera call it? Preservation mode, protect mode in the second half. So they kind of laid back a little bit in the second half, and that allowed Seattle to come into within a touchdown, but it was way too late. They needed an onside kick to do it, and it didn't happen. And the Panthers, I think, did just enough to keep Seattle away within that range for most of the second half to force them to wait long. But still, if it wasn't for the Seahawks passing up a field goal right before the first half, that would have been easily made, in my opinion, by a guy like Steven Hauschka, the Seahawks would have been in possession to tie the game on that possession where they cut it to 7. So how much of concern should this be for the Panthers about their second half performance yesterday? Are you worried? I personally am not worried, but some people are saying that they are. But I'm personally not. What is your take? Should the Panthers be worried about their second half performance yesterday?
No, I don't think so. I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, obviously being up 31-0 in the second half, it's probably gonna. I mean, I don't know what you tell your team at halftime when you're winning 31-0. I mean, great job, keep it up. But I mean, there's not too much you could do to fire them up. I mean, they're up 31 points. I mean, the Panthers, they came out looking flat. They kind of played a little conservative, I would say, and that was able to let Seattle come back into the game. And it was a great comeback by Seattle. It was very fun to watch that second half. I don't know what they were doing the first half. Obviously, it was big for them to get Marshawn Lynch back. But when you're down 31-0 at the half, you're not really going to be running the ball too often. So, a lot was on Russell Wilson's shoulders in the second half. Obviously, the defense played pretty well as well, not allowing a single point in the second half. But it was a lot of fun to watch Seattle kind of try to come back. And obviously, they did make it a game, but it was too little, too late. In the end, they kicked the field goal, then they tried to get the onside kick. They failed at that. But when you brought up that the missed field goal, I believe it was in the first half, I believe second quarter. They decided to go for it on fourth down instead of kicking the field goal. Looking back, obviously, you should probably say that they probably should have kicked the field goal. But I kind of understand what Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks were thinking. I mean, they're down 31-0. I think they're thinking, you know what, we got to get a touchdown here. We can't settle for field goal. We got to try to make this a game as soon as possible. And I think that's why they went for the fourth down instead of kicking the field goal. But obviously, looking back, it's a lot easier to say they should have kicked it. But and they should have now looking back. But in the end, it was, well, the second half was pretty fun to watch, I suppose. I mean, second half dominated by the Seahawks, first half dominated by the Panthers. In the end, the Panthers were able to put up the more points.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Now let's talk about this NFC Championship game, which was the NFC Championship game most of us were hoping for headed into the playoffs, given the amazing seasons of both Cam Newton and Carson Palmer. And yes, Tom Brady had a great season too, but I believe both Carson Palmer and Cam Newton I would vote for both of those quarterbacks ahead of him this year for MVP, based on Palmer having to come back from injury and Cam dealing with middling supporting cast in his receiving corps, sans Greg Olsen, of course. But Newton and Palmer aside, what I believe the Cardinals need to pull off the upset on the road, although it might not be that big of an upset, but given the Panthers' strengths at home and that defense, I think it will be still considered an upset. Their struggles on defense against Aaron Rodgers, as we talked about on Saturday, were a major red flag heading into this game, and their inability to run the ball on Saturday was a major red flag. And in my opinion, they are going to need improvements in both of those departments to beat the Panthers on Sunday night. What do you think the Cardinals need? In what department do they need a better performance out of on Sunday night? The running game or the defense? Take your pick.
You know what? I think it's going to come down to the defense. I mean, it's really crazy to think. I think the offense, they'll be fine even if the running game isn't up to speed or how they would like it to be. Obviously, a ton of weapons to throw the ball to. Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, John Brown. I mean, you can name them. I mean, they even got Jermaine Gresham, the former Bengals tight end, who really hasn't done too much with the Cardinals, but still.
J.J. Nelson too. That guy can fly.
Yeah, J.J. Nelson, who ran the fastest 40 time at last year's Combine. Yeah, you're right. So, yeah, a ton of offensive firepower there for Carson Palmer and the Arizona Cardinals. I'll go with their defense, though, just because. And it's really crazy to think because heading into this season, I think at least me, I'm pretty sure you were pretty high on the Cardinals as well. But the Carolina Panthers, man, I mean, 15-1, here they are. NFC Championship game, a shot to play in the Super Bowl. I don't think anybody's seen this coming, especially I believe it was the first day of OTAs or maybe even training camp, and Kelvin Benjamin goes down with a torn ACL, the number one wide receiver, no doubt. And here they are. Cam Newton is having a ton of success throwing the football to, of course, Greg Olsen, a very, very good tight end, one of the top in the NFL. But, guys like Ted Ginn, making him relevant again. And if Ted Ginn hasn't dropped so many footballs, he'd probably be up towards, 12 touchdowns on the season. Instead, I think he has 10 this season, which is even crazy to think about even then. And then, of course, Corey Brown, he's really stepped up his game this season. I mean, guys have stepped up big time for the Carolina Panthers, and of course defensively. I mean, Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, they're like this era's Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs. So fun to watch. I would say probably the best linebacker duo in the NFL right there. And then obviously on the defensive line, I mean, you have a lot of talent there as well. Charles Johnson, Mario Addison, a former Bear. Unfortunately, Jared Allen broke his foot in this past weekend's game, which is pretty tough to hear. And then can't go on and talk about the Panthers defense without mentioning Josh Norman, who has had a really good year as well, playing at a very high level, arguably the top cornerback this season. Nobody, I don't care who you are. I don't think anybody's seen this coming. You could be the biggest Carolina Panthers fan. You didn't see 15-1 NFC Championship, a shot to go to the Super Bowl this season. Nobody's seen that coming. It's just very crazy to think about. I know I went on a little rant here. In the end, yes, I think the Panthers defense, though, will have to step up because even, Cam Newton and, heading into this season, some would say his weapons were very mediocre, minus Greg Olsen. He's been able to make it work, and hopefully Jonathan Stewart is playing at a healthy, more healthy level. I mean, he seemed all right this past weekend, but he's dealing with an ankle injury. I believe he missed like the last month of the season or so. So yeah, I'll go with the Cardinals defense. They're going to have to step it up this game. It'd be a big help if that running game also improved, but in the end, it's going to be that defense. I mean, I think Carson Palmer has enough to get the job done.
I think so too, especially because sans Josh Norman, the Panthers are very thin in the secondary right now, and it showed in the second half. And now I want to talk about matchups that could decide this game. And one that comes to my mind is this. You talked about the Panthers defense, and you left out a very important name in my opinion. Talk about Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis all you want. Best linebacking duo in the NFL by far. But there is, I believe, a force that's just as important or even more important than them, and that guy's name is Kwan Short. Kwan Short has arguably been one of the best pass rushing interior defensive linemen this year, not named Aaron Donald or Geno Atkins. Kwan Short had 11 sacks, and he is a force up the middle. He forced that pick 6 to Luke Kuechly. He beat Justin Britt on a swim move, and he flustered Russell Wilson out and forced him into an off-balance throw, and Luke Kuechly was there waiting for it, and that broke the game open early yesterday. And a matchup that I think is going to decide that game is Kwan Short against the interior of the Cardinals offensive line, because in order for Carson Palmer to beat that Panthers secondary, they're going to have to keep Kwan Short off of his jersey and out of his face, because for a pocket passer like Carson Palmer, the worst kind of pressure is interior pressure. The exterior pressure, with the weapons he has, he'll have enough time to get rid of the ball and find either Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, John Brown, or whoever. But the best way to pressure a quarterback like Palmer is to get a guy in his face to disturb him immediately, and that guy is Kwan Short. I think that matchup could be the deciding factor in Sunday's game. Is that a matchup you'll be looking at? And do you think there's an even bigger matchup that will decide this game?
To decide the game, I will say it's going to come down to the offensive and defensive lines, no doubt. Kwan Short, like you said, has really improved this season and had one of the better seasons as a defensive lineman in the league. I believe he's from East Chicago, from Purdue. So it's nice to see. I shouldn't have left him off, but yeah, you're right. Having a heck of a season and had a heck of a game yesterday. But yeah, I think it will come down to the offensive and defensive lines. And obviously, I'm looking forward to seeing, of course, the two linebackers. They're just so fun to watch, Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly. But I'm really interested in seeing Josh Norman, whoever he lines up against, whether it's Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, both of the guys. Even John Brown at times. I mean, like I mentioned, the Arizona Cardinals, they have so many weapons and they're just so fun to watch. It'll be interesting to see, who Josh Norman lines up against and how he does in those matchups.
It will be. I definitely see Ron Rivera and Sean McDermott trying to move him around the formation to try to go at. I think he'll be on all those three receivers at some point in the game, because they're going to have to use him as like a secondary chess piece to move him around, because the formations could give clues on who they're targeting, and whoever they believe they're going to target, I think they're going to put Norman on in any given play. That'll be very interesting to see. And before we move on to the AFC side of things, what is your pick for this game?
To start the season, I had the Cardinals going to the Super Bowl, so I have to roll with that pick. I'm gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals to upset the Carolina Panthers. I actually made a prediction for this past weekend's games, and I actually thought Seattle was gonna win. I actually picked Seattle to defeat Carolina. That did not happen, obviously. Great story though. What Ron Rivera has had to do after being on the hot seat. Just a couple years ago, and here he is leading a 15-1 team. I expect a great game, and I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to pull it out by 3. I'm thinking more of like maybe a 31-28 type game. I think it's going to be kind of a high-scoring game. I don't think it's going to be a 10-7 game, 10-3 game, but should be a lot of fun, and we should see a lot of the big-time players step up in this game. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Me too. I think that's going to be the most exciting game to watch on Sunday. Although Tom Brady and Peyton Manning might have something to say about that, we'll see. But based on the play this year, the MVP A against MVP B, I bet that to be much more high scoring. But I just can't go against the Panthers. There's just something very special about this team and how they responded to adversity. I think they're just too tough. And the Packers exploited Arizona on the ground last week. And like as you alluded to, if only Eddie Lacy was like 5-10 pounds lighter, that would have been a long touchdown run. And also they got by him with a ragtag by the Cardinals teams with a ragtag group of receivers, and I definitely think Cam Newton can as well. And I believe the Cardinals are going to keep it close, but I believe I am going to take the Carolina Panthers by anywhere between 3 points and a touchdown. I haven't done my final scores yet. Those will be out like on Friday of this week, folks. But I predict the Panthers beating the Cardinals by 3 to 7 points within that range. And now,
and I could see that. Give me a coin and I'll toss it in. That's why I have winning. I'll actually flip the coin though, unlike the official on that game.
It didn't flip. It didn't flip. Yeah, they got to clarify that in the rule book too, along with the catch rules in the offseason. Attention, NFL Competition Committee, pay attention. We need you to do that, please. So, and now let's move on to the AFC things. And who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? How appropriate will this be? Arguably, the 2 best quarterbacks of our era. 2 of the 5 best quarterbacks, or making 2 of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks of all time. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, in what could very well be Peyton Manning's final game, go at it one more time for a chance at winning sports' most difficult crown to win outside of the Triple Crown, in my opinion. The Lombardi Trophy. Triple Crown's harder, but Lombardi Trophy's like the second hardest. But that said it. Oh, my God. I couldn't help but thinking about this last night, reminiscing about this rivalry and what makes it and what's made it such and how I believe this rivalry set the NFL into another stratosphere, and that's helped the NFL get to where it is today. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, I've already got words, but all I can say is they are the 2 most intelligent quarterbacks in NFL history. Yes, you could talk about Joe Montana in that category. You could talk about Johnny Unitas, but you could talk about Dan Marino. But with the way defenses are so exotic nowadays compared to what they were the times of Unitas and Montana and Bart Starr, at how guys like Manning and Brady were able to figure them out where very few could. And I would be willing to bet my life savings that no 2 quarterbacks were able to win. Were able to win before the snap than Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Will we ever see quarterback play like this again, or a quarterback rivalry like this again? I'm afraid we won't, because of how the college game is going with all this emphasis on the spread option and stuff like that. I think it's a dying species, man, and it's going to be a bittersweet Sunday this week, probably watching this rivalry for the final time.
Yeah, well, at least we do get to watch this rivalry for a final time. I mean, these 2 teams played earlier in the year, and heading into the year, we thought that was going to be the final time. Turns out they did. These 2 guys didn't even go head to head. It was Brock Osweiler and Tom Brady. So certainly thankful to see this Manning and Brady matchup one last time. I personally think it will be the last time. I mean, I don't see Peyton Manning back with the Broncos next year. And honestly, I really, and I hate to say this because I love Peyton Manning. Again, seems like a great guy off the field. Obviously, a great player, first ballot Hall of Famer. I just can't see a team that would be willing to take him and want him to be their quarterback. I mean, we've seen what he was able to do this season. I think he led the league in interceptions, and he didn't play in all 16 games. So, yeah, certainly looking forward to seeing this matchup one last time. Broncos and Patriots overall should be a great game. Really looking forward to seeing what the Broncos defense is going to be able to do to, kind of stop or try and stop Tom Brady. And obviously now has Julian Edelman back, who a couple weeks ago you and I were chatting, and I think we both agreed that he's probably more important to that offense than Rob Gronkowski, and we know how great Rob Gronkowski is. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to be able to try and slow down and stop Tom Brady and the Patriots. Should be a great game, I got to say. And again, one last time, Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady.
Yes. So I take that you're with me at doubt that we'll ever see a rivalry like this again.
Yeah, not one like this. We won't. I do think once these 2 or whoever retires first, if somehow, some way Peyton Manning's back in the league next season, I think after this rivalry, I think we'll start talking a lot more about, Cam Newton and Russell Wilson, or, obviously throw Andrew Luck into that mix, Andrew Luck and Cam Newton maybe. It'll be within those three players, I believe. And of course, you still can't forget the Big Bens of the world, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, but the matchups to look forward to for the next 10, 12 years, I think will be out of those three quarterbacks: Luck, Wilson, and Newton.
I absolutely agree. And Aaron Rodgers also, I believe, has a good 5, if not 6 years left. So let's never leave him out of the equation either. But back to Peyton Manning. Like you said, I think this will be his last game if Denver loses. And if Denver doesn't lose, then Super Bowl 50 will probably be his last game, because he obviously his health history and father time have caught up to him big time this year. And we'll try to delve into more details of why a little later. But I couldn't stop thinking about this scenario last night. If Brady and the Patriots prevail on Sunday, which I personally expect them to, you're going to see a whole bunch of knuckleheads on Twitter and some in the media too, say, "Oh, this ruins Peyton Manning's legacy forever. He's not an all-time great. The playoff losses are all his fault. They're all his fault. He always jokes under pressure. He folds. He's a chicken under pressure. He wusses out. Oh, God." And say that, his career's a failure that he only won one Super Bowl. His career's a failure that he won one Super Bowl. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Those guys don't know football.
Amen, Chris. So I believe I take your answer to this one as a no. Would you consider Peyton Manning's career a failure if he considers to capture a second Super Bowl ring? I don't think so. Do you?
No way. No way. The first thing you learn about football, it's not an individual game. It's a team sport. And, yeah, the quarterback is the most important position in all of sports. And Peyton Manning has been able to play at such a high level. I mean, here he is, 39 years old. He started towards last season where he kind of started to crack a little bit and, not play like the Peyton Manning that we're familiar with. But seeing what he was able to do for so long, 16, 17 plus years, amazing. And, he will definitely go down as an all-time great. Win or lose, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And to all those people, ignore those people on Twitter. And for those of you who in the media who say this, you need to get another job, because no matter what happens this week, Peyton Manning is still going to be regarded as one of the 3, 4, or 5 best to ever go throw a football. Period. End of story. And you can't you can't hold that against him. That status is beyond doubt. Don't you dare.
And even though Denver is, the number 1 seed in the AFC, people who have watched Peyton Manning this season should probably go into this game and know that there's a possibility that, he just, plays like how he has this past season and even towards last season, that they should from 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago. They shouldn't expect that Peyton Manning. We've seen Peyton Manning for, 10 games this season, 11 games this season. I think we know what to expect in this game, and hopefully he's able to, even if the Broncos lose, hopefully he's able to put up a at least decent performance, because at points this season he has been just awful. But no, I mean, look at the bigger picture here when talking about Peyton Manning's career.
Absolutely, totally. He has one of the. Like I said, he and Tom Brady, bar none. I haven't seen 2 more intelligent quarterbacks than those two, and I don't think we'll ever see as smart quarterbacks like that ever again. I can't say that's enough. But back to Peyton Manning yesterday. Yes, it wasn't pretty, but don't forget this. For the first time all season, he didn't turn the ball over yesterday, and the play of the game was this. On a 3rd and 12, he completed a pass to a 3rd-string undrafted free agent wide receiver by the name of Benny Fowler to keep the drive going, and that drive eventually wound up in the go-ahead touchdown, which Denver wouldn't look back in that game yesterday. As weak as Peyton Manning is, yet he still finds a way to make plays like that at the most opportune times. And by the way, he completes it to a guy who is not a household name whatsoever. He only caught around 10 so passes, if not less this year. I'm talking about Benny Fowler, but the whole narrative of Peyton Manning always chokes in the playoffs, I think, has to die after what we saw yesterday on that play alone. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, not his best performance, but you know, in a needly fashion, I guess. You know, when the play had to be made, he was able to do it. And you know, the Steelers had a bunch of injuries, obviously, missing their 2 running backs and Le'Veon Bell, D'Angelo Williams, missing their star wide receiver, who you could probably make an argument maybe he could be in the MVP conversation as well. But hey, in the end, it was a close game. 2 teams were both in the game, and in the end, Peyton Manning was able to find a way, make plays when needed, and obviously help the Broncos come out with a victory.
Yes, totally. And now let's move on to Tom Brady and continue our reminiscence of the history between these two men. A lot of people, like I alluded to, some knuckleheads out there like to think that Tom Brady's achievements diminish Peyton Manning's achievements. That is absolutely not true. I kind of look at it as what Peyton Manning didn't add as what opposed to Tom Brady did add. It's like they're equal talents in my opinion, but Brady just and people just say, oh, and it's not just that Brady has more rings that will eventually make him regarded as the better quarterback in this scenario, as well as the greatest quarterback of all time, in my opinion. It's how he was able to win those extra rings that make him the winner of this duel. And I put it in air quotes because the two are very good friends, and they don't give a damn about what you and I talk about them. So, but what do you think was the thing that set Brady apart from Manning in the end?
Well, now this is a big picture, as in their careers, correct?
Yes.
I honestly, and don't get me wrong, in the end, and no disrespect to Peyton Manning, we've already talked about 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I think in the end I would rather have Tom Brady, but
yes.
To start his career, I mean, his first few rings, yeah, he played well. Yeah, the offense played well, but those defenses were nasty. And this is really the first time that I could recall seeing Peyton Manning work with one of the top defenses in the league. And obviously, you could probably make an argument that Denver has the best defense this season. It's too bad that Peyton Manning hasn't been able to play like the Peyton Manning that we're familiar with, that he's played at such a low level. But because if he were able to play, the way he was able to play just 4 years ago, it really would be something special to see. So I think when it comes to the rings, Tom Brady had a lot of help on defense. Not to take away anything what Tom Brady was able to do throughout his career, because he threw 50 touchdowns in one season. I mean, that right there says a lot. And I know that just a couple years ago, Peyton Manning was able to throw 55. But I think in the end, it's going to come down to the overall team. And I think when you kind of compare the overall teams that Peyton Manning had to the overall teams Tom Brady had, I think you'll find out that Tom Brady was able to work with a much better team. And maybe it's not always, the offensive talent around him, because you compare, the Patriots offense this season to the Broncos offense this season in terms of, wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. You could probably say that I would probably take the running backs and wide receivers that Denver has over the Patriots wide receivers and running backs. Obviously, you would take Gronkowski at tight end, but overall, I think Tom Brady was just able to work with better teams.
That is a big factor, but I think another factor that separates Brady from Manning, only so many people have the gifts of a Brady, Manning, Montana, Favre, Marino, Rodgers, you name it. But even less of those people have something you can't quantify: desire. And yes, all those guys want to win. But what separates Brady apart from Manning, and pretty much all those guys, in my opinion, maybe even Montana to a certain degree, is that he just has that Michael Jordan-esque refusal to lose. Keep it, and the desire to fulfill a childhood dream. He was 3 years old. His parents were 49ers season ticket holders. They took him to see that game where Joe Montana fouled Dwight Clark in the end zone, and he was like, "Hey, mommy, I want to do that when I grow up." So it was a childish dream that he saw when he was that play when he was 3 years old in person. And he got hooked onto it for life, and it just gave him this extra sense of drive that you just can't really put into words. And I think that underrated thing is what made Tom Brady succeed in those situations where Peyton Manning unfortunately did not, but those were not all Peyton Manning's fault. But I think that's the main thing that separates Brady from Manning in this equation. It's not just the amount of rings, it's how they were won.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point right there, David. I mean, you're not going to find many athletes. I don't care if they're football players, basketball players, baseball players, tennis players, anything. You're not going to find many athletes with the same desire, the same mentality that Tom Brady has. And that right there is a fantastic point that you brought up.
Absolutely, and don't forget, he's very much into holistic health. He's almost a vegan in certain ways. Keep that in mind. He eats avocado-based ice cream for dessert, goes to bed at 8:30 each night.
You better be writing this down.
Yeah, well, I follow. I've been following quite a similar regimen since my health woes of 5 years ago. But Tom's isn't the same. But for an athlete, I'd say he's my favorite guy to look up to in the health department. Although Peyton coming back from neck surgeries, that will always be one of the best stories in sports history.
To throw 55 touchdowns in a season.
Absolutely. Just 2 years removed from neck fusion surgery, which was that. And before we get into this game, many people like to ask me, well, geez, why is Brady still at the top of this game and Manning isn't? I would say it's not because that one is vastly superior to the other. I think the neck surgeries, which has forced Peyton to use his lower body to throw for the past, since 2012, now his lower body is gone. And with that, that's exposed the sapped arm strength that was sapped since he had that neck surgery. It took a toll on his lower body. So I think the after effects of the neck surgery caught up to Peyton Manning. And Tom Brady, given his regiment and stuff like that, that's, I think, one of the main reasons why you're seeing Brady continue to be Brady while Manning get bitten by father time at this point. Wouldn't you say that's a good way to explain it?
I think so. And maybe if Peyton Manning didn't ever have to go through, the whole neck surgery experience, you already touched on how Tom Brady kind of takes care of his body, how he has a very strict diet. And I think another way to put it, I think Tom Brady's just in better shape, and he took better care of himself. I don't know exactly about that, but because I don't exactly know what Peyton Manning has gone through, how what kind of diet he has and all of that. But I think just in the end, I mean, it's incredible to see Tom Brady still play at this level at the age of 38. Throwing to no-name wide receivers, giving a guy like Keyshawn Martin a new 2-year contract just this past week. I mean, it is pretty amazing. And I think instead of always questioning, why this is happening, I think at times we just got to just sit down, let's not question it, and let's just enjoy it.
I most agree. Let's just enjoy this game because, like I said, we're never going to see a rivalry again. Tom Brady, like Sean O'Hara of NFL Network said this. And let's throw Aaron Rodgers in this equation as well, because we can't leave him out either, as I alluded to at the top of the program. When we tell our kids, Sean O'Hara, a former New York Giants guy, now works for NFL Network, said this earlier in the year. When we tell our kids about Rodgers, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady, we're going to tell our grandkids that those three were like the Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird of the NFL. And I don't think you could put it any more perfectly than that. Could you?
Oh, no way. I mean, the three best or the three best in this era. I don't think there's any doubt. Especially, Tom Brady, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, they're towards the end of their career. I mean, I think it was Tom Brady who said, he wants to play like 10 more years.
I think he has 3 or 4 more left, but that's about it.
Right. I mean, in the end, he is towards the end of his career. I mean, sure, he's playing at a high level, but a guy like Aaron Rodgers, to see how he's been able to turn into arguably the league's top quarterback. I mean, he's certainly in that conversation. And seeing what he was able to do with guys like a Jeff Janis, Jared Abbrederis, Devontae Parker at times, Richard Rodgers at tight end. I mean, it really is magnificent. And I mean,
don't forget Peyton Manning and Blair White.
yeah, exactly. And this is a guy that had to. He started his NFL career by being a backup to already a guy that they were calling was the best quarterback in Packers history, and Brett Favre. This is the guy that had to fill some pretty big shoes. I think he's. I don't think there's any doubt that he's been far from a different disappointment. Quite the opposite of a disappointment. So far to start his career. I mean, he's been great.
Yes, and I just have to say this. Sorry, Chris. I just can't stop talking about this because it's just so special. Before we analyze the game itself, but I just think the storyline here is just as big, if not even bigger than the game itself, given the historical implications. The end of one of the proudest eras of quarterbacking in NFL history is going to come to an end one way or the other this Sunday. Not suggesting Brady will try to be the end of the battle of the two, but as much as we in the media like to hype up the rivalry between Brady and Manning, the friendship that those two guys have off the field is just admirable. How they just love each other like brothers off the field, dare I say. Like, I hear stories that Peyton and his wife Ashley eat dinner with Tom and Giselle every offseason. I think Chris Mortensen himself reported that they do that every offseason. They like how they were able to stay above the fray, above all the noise their entire career, and making sure that not one of them was unfairly taken down by the media, whether Tom Brady has defended Peyton Manning at every step of the way, when some knucklehead in the media says, oh, he's not even an all-time great, and Peyton Manning would jab anybody in the media that says that Tom Brady's just lucky because he had Bill Belichick. How those guys were just able, like I said, to stay above the fray. I think that's the most beautiful thing of all, and it kind of like makes this rivalry super special, because this was a mutual admiration rivalry and not a rivalry of bad blood at all.
Right. And yeah, when you think of rivalries, you think of two guys that do not like each other at all, two teams that do not like each other at all. But that's quite the opposite when you're talking about the Peyton Manning and Tom Brady rivalry. I mean, you see towards the after the game, the handshake, they always meet up, as pretty much every two teams quarterbacks do after a game. But I mean, just over the years, they never really say anything bad about each other, and here we are, one of the greatest rivalries in NFL history. And when you look at some of the greatest rivalries, I mean, you got I'll point to a few names that you brought up earlier. I mean, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, those two guys. I mean, during their playing days, I mean, they did not like each other at all. Or how about Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas? I mean, Isaiah Thomas was a Chicagoan, and those two guys did not like each other at all. I mean, and sure, we're different times, and of course, a different sport. These two guys aren't physically going at it head to head, but I mean, two of the best ever, and two of the greatest. And obviously they've gone up against each other so many times throughout their career. Yeah, I mean, it really is something that you kind of just have to sit back and admire, because it's not something you see every day. I mean, just a month or two ago, we seen Odell Beckham Jr. and Josh Norman go at it, and I'm not saying that's some rivalry. I mean, maybe it will be 4 or 5 years from now we'll be saying it, but seeing what how those two guys were going at it, and how they represented each other and the organization, and then kind of comparing that to the whole Peyton Manning and Tom Brady rivalry, it is just, again, something you kind of just have to sit back and admire.
Yes, and you can't compare Josh Norman and Odell Beckham to Manning and Brady, because there is zero bad blood between Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. None. Zero. That's it. And I hope fans of both quarterbacks on both sides of the spectrum come to realize that sooner rather or later, because I want this debate to end. Yes, Brady might have come out on the higher end of the ladder, but Peyton was just a couple steps behind at the end of the day. Wasn't big of a difference at all. We just got to drop this debate and stop it, because that's exactly how Peyton Manning and Tom Brady would want it themselves, because they personally don't like it when we try to tear down one at the expense of the other. They don't. I guarantee you that. And I'm sorry we almost used up all our time. We got about 7 minutes left, but it's just tempting to just dwell on the past in moments like these in sports, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, again, I mean, it's a game that, this Sunday, of course, it is the Broncos and Patriots, but the number one storyline is Peyton versus Brady. And, I think there's a very good chance that this is going to be the last time that we see this matchup.
Absolutely, one of the best matchups in sports history, and two guys who have played, who have set an extraordinary example of sportsmanship throughout this entire rivalry that all aspiring athletes in any sport should pay attention to, and read about when they're growing up. And now let's talk about this game. I am a big Peyton Manning fan, and nobody wants to see Peyton Manning go out on top more than I do. That said, with the Patriots offense now at full strength and their defense almost now at full strength with Collins and Hightower, although one of them might not play this week, but whatever. I think that this game has three distinct possibilities. It could go any one of these three ways. Number one, a Patriots blowout win. Number two, a so-so game in between, which the Patriots win by 8 points or 10. 3, a close game with either team winning. Which one of those scenarios do you foresee the most happening?
Man, it's the AFC Championship game. I gotta think it's gonna be a close one. It's gonna be a very hard-fought game. I think the Patriots pull it out. I really do, and I'm sorry to you. I'm sorry to Broncos country.
No, apologize. For the record, I don't root for any teams anymore because it's because it's better for me to have mixed emotions than one emotion one way or the other in this business.
That's true. But yeah, I think. I could see a Patriots blowout if Manning and that offense just isn't able to do anything, obviously. Because this is also we talk so much about the Broncos defense. The Patriots defense isn't anything to just look over. They've played very well this season.
A great defense.
And to lose two guys that played pretty damn well last year and had a big part in their Super Bowl victory, in Darrelle Revis, one of the top cornerbacks in the league, and then Brandon Browner, who was
just a product of the system.
What's that?
Brandon Browner was just a product of the system. He is overrated. He stinks in coverage. Down the court, and Revis hit him. He's just a size height specimen. That's all he is.
Yeah, and he has certainly proved that this year in New Orleans. But obviously, Malcolm Butler, the Super Bowl hero last year, undrafted free agent, has stepped up big time and has played and has earned himself a Pro Bowl invite. That of course is if the Patriots don't advance to the Super Bowl. So I could see a Patriots blowout. Wouldn't be surprised. But I gotta think it's the AFC Championship game. I gotta think the Denver Broncos as well as the New England Patriots are both going to be on the top of their game. They know that. Especially the Broncos. I gotta think there's teammates in that locker room that has a feeling that, hey, this is Peyton's last year. Let's have him finish out on top. Like John Elway did. I'm gonna roll with the Patriots. I'll say in a close one again. Wouldn't be too surprised though if unfortunately it's a blowout. I'm gonna cross my fingers. I'm really hoping for two great games this weekend, championship weekend. But all right, I'll roll with Patriots in a close one.
Yeah, I haven't predicted a final score of that game yet. Like I said, those will be out on Friday. I see a Patriots win, but let me give you more encouragement to the kind of game you're hoping for, Chris. Some people might say, the Broncos, this is just another version of the 2001 Chicago Bears or 2006 Chicago Bears, whatever. But here is what they have done so well this year. that whole kicking and screaming mantra that John Elway preached in his press conference at the end of last season when they were 1-done to the Colts in John Fox's final game. He said he wanted the team to go out kicking and screaming. Gary Kubiak, I think we could say he has brought that mentality to this team. With 3 comebacks in the fourth quarter, down 14 points. All the playoff teams. Obviously, one of them was that Patriots game with Brock Osweiler. One of that was that amazing game against the Chiefs in Week 2, and the other was that game against the Bengals in Week 16. And they have won. And they have won 4 games, including yesterday's game against Pittsburgh, or if not 5, if you count the Cleveland game, when they trailed at some point within the fourth quarter. So they have that kicking and screaming mentality, and I think that could go a long way to making it a close game. Do you agree?
Oh yeah. Whether it's Peyton Manning at the helm or Brock Osweiler at the helm, it does kind of look like a different mentality that this team has. They do seem to have that kicking and screaming mentality. They're able to pull out the close games even when they're behind, and maybe that's something that could help them get through and not only have a close game with the Patriots, but pull out a victory.
That is possible because keep in mind, as great as Tom Brady is, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, his all-time record in Denver, 2-6. So that mile high House of Horrors, or that mile high curse, or whatever you want to call it. I don't like curses in sports. That will be a frequent topic. A frequent topic of discussion in those press conferences in Foxborough this week. But
the quarterbacks that he beat there in Denver, Danny Cannell, Tim Tebow.
You got that, Danny Cannell and Tim Tebow. And we just made our picks for the game. We both like the Patriots, although we foresee the Broncos surprising a lot of people and keeping it close, if not pulling out the upset if they play the way they have been playing all year. So it's going to be a very interesting to see how that game turns out, and what'll be probably the last ever game between legends Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. But matchups that are going to decide this game, a matchup that I think is going to decide it. C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman are going to have the games of their lives, because the best way you can't stop Tom Brady, you can only contain Tom Brady. And the best way to contain Tom Brady is to keep him off the field for long stretches of time. And in order for the Broncos to stay in this game, it's going to have to be the C.J. Anderson, Ronnie Hillman show on offense to keep drives long, keep Brady off the field, just like they did on the final drive the last game. I think that is the key. That is the matchup that's probably going to decide who wins and who loses this game. Ronnie Hillman, C.J. Anderson versus the entire Patriots defense, in that matter. Any matchup in your mind that you think decides the game?
That is probably the number one matchup right there. That probably the number one. Similar answer to what I said for the NFC Championship game. The offensive lines, both teams do not have good offensive lines, and both teams have pretty decent, to say the least, defensive lines or pass rushers. Let's see what these offensive lines are going to be able to do to help contain, give their quarterback time in the pocket, and let's see if they're going to be able to help the running attack while they're at it. But I love your what you just said. Ronnie Hillman, C.J. Anderson, that they are going to have the game of their life, because not only running the ball and having success running the ball keeps Tom Brady off the field, but it helps Peyton Manning and obviously the passing game as well in the end.
It sure does. And one final question before we go, Chris. Would there be any situation where you would put Brock Osweiler in the game next week?
If they're down 21-0 or more at halftime, sorry, Peyton. I'm going to have to go with Brock Osweiler. Let's see what you have.
I would actually agree there. Well, that does it for this edition with Sports Crunch with DKROM. And by the way, my man Chris Shanafelt is headed to Tampa this week to cover the East-West Shrine game, which is one of the big 2 collegiate all-star games going on within these next 2 weeks as we prepare for the 2016 NFL Draft. And we're going to be talking a lot about that, plus a lot more next time when we convene next time here on Sports Crunch with DKROM. Thank you once again, Chris, for being such a great friend of the program. You enjoy your time in Tampa, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Hey, always a pleasure to be on. It's talk football, especially when we have a magnificent football weekend that just ended, and hopefully we have a even better championship game weekend this coming week. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, David. As always, anytime, I'm more than willing to hop on the show, and yeah, I appreciate your support, and looking forward to covering the Shrine game. Thanks for the shout.
My pleasure, Chris, and we're looking forward to you having on the program next time. And that officially does it for today. For David Cromwell and my good buddy Chris Shanafelt, this is Sports Crunch with DKROM. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.